I've got an awesome show for you guys today. I have attorney Terrell Thomas in the studio with me, and we're going to be talking about a hot topic issue. That's right. We're talking about the city of Atlanta's new marijuana decriminalization law. What we're going to do is we're going to get into the facts of this new city ordinance. Now, Terrell, that's basically where we're going here today, right?
That is correct.
You are listening to Lewis on the Law. My name is James Lewis, and I will be your host for the next hour today. I don't want to get you guys confused because we're not really going to talk about the merits of the marijuana laws that exist, whether they're good or they're bad. Okay, Terrell, can you introduce yourself? You gave me a fancy title. I know you from way back, so I don't know about these fancy titles. Who are you, and what are you doing here?
That's right, James. We go back. Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning. My name is attorney Terrell Thomas. I am an assistant public defender for the City of Atlanta Public Defender's Office. Just up until recently, I was the lead attorney for the in-custody division. That's anyone that's taken into custody. So essentially, anyone that gets arrested for traffic, DUI, city ordinances, and a few certain misdemeanors, I'll represent them in court the next day down at the City of Atlanta.
Okay, that sounds like a big job there.
Absolutely. They're in and out of there. A lot of traffic.
A lot of traffic. It's a huge volume, huh?
Yep. Glad to be of service to them, too.
Okay, so let's get into this a little bit. So why are we having this conversation in the first place? I mean, what happened that brought you here today?
Well, we're having this conversation because based on the feedback that we're getting from the general public, not just our clients, the community as a whole. We do a lot of work in the community. Churches, nonprofits, schools, homeless shelters, a lot of different areas within the community and just people in general. There seemed to be a bit of a confusion about the state of possession of marijuana within the City of Atlanta limits. Was it legalized? There were people coming up celebrating because they thought it was actually legal now based upon the new amendment. There were people brought into custody saying, these charges need to be dismissed. I was walking around smoking marijuana and he took me into custody. It just got decriminalized. I heard it on the radio. And so we had to be the bearer of bad news in explaining that. So there seems to be a misconception out there that marijuana is legalized or what decriminalization means, what decriminalized actually means.
Yeah, because there could be some confusion there, because I know if you've ever been out to Colorado recently or anything like that,
right.
I mean, a friend of mine told me he went into the liquor store and there was an old lady. I mean, I don't know. I'm old too, so there was an elderly woman there smoking just as plain as day. Just before she went into the store, she put it out simply, went in the store, bought something, came back and just lit up and just walked down the street. Now you can't do that here in Atlanta, right?
Right. That's I believe it's pretty legalized out there in Colorado. Right now within the city limits, well, within the state of Georgia, it's illegal throughout the state of Georgia. Within the city limits and a few other municipalities and jurisdictions, it has now been decriminalized. And I guess digging deeper into that, the question we're going to kind of end up with today is it really decriminalized? But to get to that point, I want to start off by actually defining decriminalization versus legalization. So, of course, legalization is the action of making something that was previously illegal, making it permissible by law, such as in Colorado and California, Washington, Oregon, recreational use is now legalized. About 30 other states, actually. But decriminalization is the lessening or reduction of criminal penalties in relation to certain acts, though regulated permits, fines may be enforced. So essentially reducing the penalties, the sentencing, erasing jail time for certain offenses, that's decriminalization. That means it's still illegal, but we're decreasing the criminal penalties that can be associated with that crime. So in the instance of marijuana within the city of Atlanta, it's still illegal, but the intent was behind the amendment was to, well, people, the conception out there was, or the perception out there was, is that you will no longer be arrested now for possessing marijuana under an ounce within the city limits. And that's not exactly true. So that's what we're going to dig into today.
Okay. So when did this law change? I mean, it went from one point where it was completely illegal and you'd be thrown in jail immediately. Mm-hmm. And now there's this question. When did this law change? Do you know?
I believe it was actually signed into law right as Mayor Kasim Reed was going out. I believe it was pushed through City Council, and it was actually made effective last October or November 2017. That's when it was actually written in, into law. Going back to the actual history of the amendment, the way that it kind of came up is, there were a lot of concerns, and I saw it myself in custody in regards to the type of people from the community that were being taken into custody for possession of marijuana. And then statistics and research did in fact show from 2014 to 2016, 92% of marijuana arrests within the city of Atlanta limits were people that were African American, black people. So I'll say that again. 92% of marijuana arrests in the city of Atlanta from 2014 to 2016 were 92% of those were African American. And so, of course, any law that has that type of discriminatory effect, whether intentional or unintentional, or that disparate effect on our community, it deserves to be evaluated or, looked into, right? So, I mean, take the hands-free law. We're all familiar with the new hands-free law. You can't hold your mobile device anymore, right? So can
I ask you a question?
Sure.
Do you hold your mobile device when you drive at all?
Now with the new law, no.
Okay.
I don't.
Just checking. I'm not saying that I do. I just wondered if you did, seeing as how you're part of the city government.
Absolutely. As a government employee, I abide by all laws, and I make sure that I don't have my phone supported in my hand or by my body.
Okay.
So, whether it's in my seat or in my cup holder, I make sure that got my eyes on the road. But back to the hands-free law, let's say that law it's hypothetical. Well, let's say it's in place now, and let's say a year later, the statistics come out, and on WBTV it says, 92% of the tickets that were given out for the hands-free law were people of Latino or of Hispanic descent or Asian descent. With those statistics coming out, that raises a concern that, hey, something's going on here that we need to take a look into. So naturally, that was kind of, the driving force behind looking at what needs to be changed or what needs to be done. Coupled with that there were concerns that, the priorities of law enforcement within the city limits, the different police agencies, there were concerns that it might be some better to redirect some of the priorities to more higher level criminal offenses, violent offenses. A lot of robberies, carjackings, people kicking in doors, taking things, ag assaults, ag batteries, things of those nature that we see, every other day in the news, right? As opposed to low-level drug offenses, non-violent drug offenses.
Yeah, I'd much rather the cops be patrolling to make sure no one kicks in my door at my house.
I think a lot of people would. So those were basically the two main things, the driving forces behind reevaluating this law and ultimately the new amendment.
Now, has it been in effect enough that we're actually seeing some effects of this? Has it reduced at all?
I would say yes. At this point, currently, to date, yes. But it started very slow. So I guess maybe I was a little bit too optimistic when it first happened. And, once Kasim Reed signed it, I was looking for, an absolute change. Because me personally, I didn't really know how it all worked. When you signed a new amendment into the city ordinance code of Atlanta, and then, I'm in there in custody and I'm looking for a change to see a little bit, less young African-American men being brought in for marijuana charges or people with lower incomes or just anyone with marijuana charges, really. And I didn't really see a change at first. And so, but then, that's when you kind of dig in a little deeper. You kind of understand those things take time to trickle down from departments and, orders given and the new legislation actually having to be written into law. Those things take time. So I would say at this point that there has been a change. So with the marijuana decriminalization coupled with the bail reform, a lot less people are being taken into custody, and we're seeing less of a disparate effect because of the amendment that the administration and the city council approved.
Now, what type of reform did you just say?
The bail reform.
And what does that involve?
The bail reform is something that took place within the city of Atlanta limits. It's basically a lot of lower level offenses, a lot of traffic offenses. They reformed the whole bail schedule down at the city of Atlanta to where people with traffic tickets and lower level offenses, nonviolent offenses, they'd be able to just be let go after being taken into custody. Therefore, decreasing any collateral consequences their incarceration might entail. Missing work, missing a job, losing housing, where are my kids at? So just kind of decreasing that effect, and that was put into place as well.
Okay, that's great. We've got a lot of stuff coming up. We got more stuff to get into. This show is all about empowerment, and talking about what can get you thrown in jail will definitely help empower you to keep your job, at least. My name is James Lewis. You're listening to Lewis on the Law. I've got a great show. We're talking about Atlanta's new marijuana laws, and I have attorney Terrell Thomas in the studio with me. We'll be back in just a minute. You're listening to Lewis on the Law. My name is James Lewis, and I have a great show for you guys today. We are talking about the City of Atlanta's new marijuana decriminalization law. And it's a really misunderstood subject, and I have attorney Terrell Thomas in the studio with me. We're going to get into it. If you need legal advice, don't take your advice from this show only. If you are in a serious legal situation, you need to contract with an attorney. We are here. We're
Absolutely.
here to empower you, and we're here to give you legal information. But if you've got a serious situation, you need to go ahead and get in contact with an attorney. You can contact me, and if I can't, I may be able to help you with your issue. If I can't help you with your issue, I can direct you to an attorney who can help you with your issue. And you can just hit the last page of my website, jameslewislegal.com. You can give me a call, 404-610-0075. Or you can just email me, james@jameslewislegal, and I can help you out. If you have a question or a topic you'd like to hear on this show, go ahead and drop me a line. The last page of my website is a contact page. And if I like your question, I will bring an attorney on who actually knows something about your topic, and we'll get into it. And talking about getting into it, Terrell, we're going to get into the actual law itself. So what is the actual law all about? What does it say?
The new amendment? Yeah, let's dig right into it. And just for the listeners' information, this is Section 106-182 of the Atlanta Municipal Code.
Just in case you want to look it up yourself.
Absolutely. Just Google Atlanta Muni Code and a website will come up. You'll be able to just type in Section 106-182. So the express language from the ordinance states that it shall be unlawful for any person to possess 1 ounce or less of marijuana within the corporate limits of the city. What does that mean? That means it's illegal to possess marijuana within the city of Atlanta, just like it is the entire state of Georgia. But specifically, 1 ounce or less is what this ordinance is addressing. The next sentence, any person found guilty of violating this section shall be punished by a fine not exceeding $75. So what does that mean? That means if you are caught violating this by possessing marijuana less than 1 ounce within the city limits, you'll be fined no more than $75. So keeps more money in our pockets, decreases it, because I believe the fines generally used to be around $200, a maximum fine of $1,000, or I believe, what was it, 180 days in jail? It's either $500 fine and 180 days in jail, or a $1,000 fine and 180 days.
Yeah, now, $75 is much more affordable than a $1,000 fine and 180 days in jail.
Absolutely. So it's cost efficient, right? $75, and shall not be punished by imprisonment for any term. So that means in regards to your sentencing, when you go to court to address this charge, the judge under this has no power to sentence you to any jail time under this ordinance. So
now, wait a minute. Does that mean I could walk down the street smoking some? Not that I don't smoke any marijuana.
Hypothetically speaking.
Though I may have in the past.
Right.
I'm not going to say what I did in the past. But anyways, I wouldn't do it now. But can I go ahead and walk down the street smoking marijuana?
No, absolutely not.
We're not Colorado yet.
Not yet. So I'm about to explain why. So going to, and I guess we learned this maybe in common law, right? As far as the plain interpretation of laws and what they mean. So if not giving an alternative meaning, you are to interpret it for its plain meaning on its face. So shall not be punished by imprisonment for any term. And you see I have shall not be punished highlighted. That goes punishment, in what we learned in crim pro adjudication. Punishment goes to sentencing, which goes to after you are convicted, which is after you entered a plea to your case already and you've been found guilty either by at trial or by entering a guilty or nolo plea. So post-conviction is where sentencing or punishing occurs. So it's during that frame, during that time period of the legal proceedings, where there is no authority for them to punish you with any jail time. But the actual ordinance is silent in regards to, and I don't know what the intent was or what's being worked, but the actual ordinance is silent on whether you can be arrested, because you being taken into custody in the beginning or you being arrested out there on the street is different from what the ordinance is talking about. The ordinance is talking about punishment and sentencing, which comes at the end of your legal proceeding of your marijuana case.
Now, wait a minute. Being arrested sounds like punishment to me. I don't know about you.
So is it decriminalized if essentially you can still be arrested for it? Is it really decriminalized if it's still having that same effect that it was intended to change?
Well, I know if I got arrested, I would feel like I was being punished. Even if I was just in there for the night and got let out in the morning, I would not be happy about it.
And that's exactly what was happening. People were coming in confused, angry, taken into custody. It's decriminalized. I saw them sign it, and it's on the radio, and I saw it on the news. And so, there was just a lot of misinformation and misunderstanding. Not that it was anyone's fault per se, but this information needs to get out there that it's decriminalized. You can still be arrested. You can still be taken into custody. Now, to that same point, and we're going to get into that a little bit later, officers now, the good thing about the amendment is officers now, and they've been informed and are aware of those discriminatory effects within certain police agencies. And so now they're also aware of their discretion to just give a court copy. And a court copy is, for people that don't know, is just like when you get a traffic ticket, you're allowed to sign your citation and then be on your way. So officers are now utilizing their discretion in providing people court copies under this City of Atlanta Ordinance Amendment. They're starting to do that a lot more, which decreases incarceration and decreases arrest.
Now, did they never have discretion before?
They did, but, I can't speak to, the SOPs of different police agencies and what I think they had that discretion to either, charge someone under the city ordinance, but also the state misdemeanor marijuana statute, Title 16. I think it's 330 or 1330B. So they have the discretion, and they have, because officers they're given their authority. They're post-certified by the state. So they're under oath, and they swore to take an oath to enforce all laws. So if they're arresting within the City of Atlanta limits, they can write you up under a city ordinance, or they can use their discretion to arrest you under the state misdemeanor statute, marijuana. So it's really up to them. And we're going to dig into that a little bit later. But the main takeaway is the ordinance is essentially, at least from my interpretation, is essentially silent on the officer's initial arresting powers if you are caught with possession of marijuana under an ounce. And they'd also probably arrest you for other reasons, which we'll get into. So although it is decriminalized and it is a step in the right direction, and we have seen a decrease in actual arrests, so those are the good things. Those are the great takeaways. They technically still can arrest you, and we do still see those from time to time, for various reasons, but it can happen, and they do have that discretion. So that needs to be, we want the public to be well informed and well educated when they're out there, going about their daily lives and making those decisions. Okay.
Now, you city attorneys, you guys are like super police officers. You guys are part of the court system. You're officers of the court. Can't you order the cops not to arrest people?
As public defenders, I feel we're superheroes, right? As far as the things we do for a lot of our clients are lower income. A lot of our clients are the youth, and the youth of our future, if I'm not mistaken. So we do a lot of things that are community based, and we have a duty, of course, of zealous advocacy for the best interests of our client. So we don't have any authority. The public defenders, it's not really our duty to have a say so in legislation or the politics or the policies of different agencies, but doing some groundwork and getting, looking into this research and going and seeing where these disparate effects are coming from, these discriminatory effects, and addressing them with our clients face to face, and not just handling their legal matters, but also legally educating them on what's really going on, what their rights are and what to do the next time they're in a situation. So by the time they're done and disposed of their case, they leave out of the court, more educated on the court and what to do and what not to do with police encounters and their rights in regards to marijuana possession.
Okay, so how do the police agencies feel about this? I mean, if the goal was to attack the discriminatory effects of this new law, how are the police agencies actually feeling about this? I mean, do you have the support of the APD or Fulton County?
To my knowledge, I don't want to speculate as to what their stance is in regards to my personal knowledge. From what I am aware of, when this legislation, this amendment, or was being looked into, from what I understand, and excuse me if I misspeak, APD expressed their public support and their awareness of the disparate effect. But if most people don't know, that's just one of like 6 or 7 police agencies that operate within City of Atlanta limits. You got the big boys, Georgia State Patrol. Everyone knows about them. Georgia Capitol Police, Georgia State Police.
Wait a minute, are Georgia State Police real cops?
I believe they're post-certified. I have to fact check that. Georgia Tech. You've got MARTA Police. And so there's several different.
Wait a minute. Now, MARTA Police?
Yeah.
Oh,
MARTA
wow.
Police. And they arrest people for violation of city ordinances and, jumping the fair gate and being disorderly out there on, just making the MARTA ride a little unsafe and, with people's behaviors and whatnot. So
don't smoke any marijuana in front of a MARTA police officer. That's one of the takeaways.
I would say don't smoke marijuana, period, as it's still illegal. But definitely MARTA, whether you're on campus, whether you're on MARTA catching the train, there's law enforcement everywhere. And I'm not aware of any other police agency publicly supporting this amendment.
Okay, we've got more coming up. We're going to get more into the effects of this new law. I'll be back. I'm here in the studio with attorney Terrell Thomas. My name is James Lewis. You're listening to Lewis on the Law. We have a great show for you. Of course, we're talking about the City of Atlanta's new marijuana decriminalization law. We'll be back in a minute. You're listening to Lewis on the Law. My name is James Lewis, and I will be your host for the next 30 minutes. I have an awesome show for you guys today. We are talking about a real hot-button issue, the City of Atlanta's new marijuana laws. And Terrell, I have attorney Terrell Thomas here in the studio with me. He is a City of Atlanta public defender, and let's see. I had a question while we were off air from a caller, and he asked, "Is the fine $75? Is it just that? Is it a flat rate? Because you said earlier that it goes up that it used to go up in stages."
Well, not exactly. From my understanding, under the City of Atlanta ordinance, if you get charged under that ordinance and you go ahead and plea out, or you close your case or you dispose of your case, the fine will always be $75. No jail time. As far as I'm understood, there's a bunch of circumstances and other things that could go wrong, or it could take you down a different path up until your disposition of that case. But in the City of Atlanta, from my understanding, it's always $75, no jail time. Now, the City of South Fulton, I don't want to speak too much, but I know there's several other municipalities or jurisdictions around the Atlanta area that have a similar $75, or initially it's $100, $150, and it may be aggravated up to a higher fine amount, after your third, fourth, or fifth one. I can't say for sure, but definitely in the City of Atlanta, from my understanding, $75 fine.
Okay, so when you get in there, can something happen where you start off with this ticket and then all of a sudden it gets upgraded?
Yes, and that's what I wanted to touch on. Just the hypothetical situations that even though if everything goes right, you get a court copy, you come to court, you can still a lot of things can still change during the course of the legal proceedings, which you don't have control of essentially. And so, kind of going back to what we spoke about before, officers having that discretion. They're post-certified by the state. They are sworn to enforce all laws, not just the city ordinance, but also state misdemeanor laws. So they have that discretion to decide if they want to give you a court copy or take you in under the city ordinance, or if they want to arrest you under the state misdemeanor, OCGA 1613-30 subsection B, for where you could be facing still a $1,000 fine or up to a year in jail for possession of marijuana under an ounce. And how it works is, just to give the general public a little bit of knowledge, there's not really anyone that could command a police officer or a law enforcement officer to only enforce one law, say, hey, only write tickets for the city ordinance and don't arrest people for the state misdemeanor. There's not really an entity or someone that can tell them to enforce one law and not enforce another. Not to my knowledge, no mayor, no city council, no one can directly tell them to not enforce the law. So in regards to what can go wrong or something that can change during your legal proceedings with a marijuana charge, a few things is initially out the gate, you can be charged with either the city ordinance or the state misdemeanor statute. Another thing that can go wrong, and what people sometimes forget, is that the solicitors and prosecutors are the same. Solicitors are prosecutors. Prosecutors in general, they have that prosecutorial discretion they can dismiss your case, they can reduce the charges, they can amend the charges to another charge, and they can also upgrade your charge. So,
now, wait a minute. What kind of circumstance would happen where they would upgrade your charge from a misdemeanor to something else?
Well, because officers don't know the law as well as lawyers. They didn't go to law school, so typically they charge based upon their knowledge, but they might not always get it right. Sometimes they get it wrong, and so the prosecutor then takes that, accuses it, indicts it, looks over the facts, and then sees, what, this charge isn't supposed to be on here. I'll decline this charge, or, I'll take this charge off, or, it's not necessarily aggravated as much as the police said. I'm going to reduce this charge or amend this charge. And a lot of times the officer might miss something to where the charge needs to be upgraded up to a higher jurisdiction, upgrading the charge or just upgrading it to a more serious level of the same charge. And they have that prosecutorial discretion. That's their job, and that's what they do. So I'm not sure, and I don't want to speculate as to prosecutorial policies on whether they feel the need to upgrade, but I've personally seen it happen to where a city ordinance charge has been, upgraded to a state misdemeanor charge, which, I'm not really in a position to go into, but people need to know that they have that power that's within their discretion. That's part of their job. And so, the reasons why they make those decisions, I don't really have the knowledge as to why they do that.
So that's a really important distinction. You can actually think that you're going to go to jail because you're in the city of Atlanta and you think it's just going to, it's decriminalized here at $75. You get in there and you've just been a really hard guy to work with, and they decide to upgrade you.
And for various reasons, and I don't want to speculate. And so, but in a lot of times, and I could say just to that same point, I've seen situations to where the cop originally wrote a state misdemeanor charge for marijuana, and the solicitor exercised their discretion and they reduced it to the city ordinance to where that person would only have to pay $75. So it goes both ways. It's within their discretion. It's not, it's not a right or wrong thing. It's within their discretion, right? So, but it's important that people understand that they have that discretion to do it, so that they know what entails when you get a possession of marijuana charge within the city of Atlanta limits. Next is, let's say hypothetically, you're driving, someone's driving, they get pulled over for a taillight, cop smells marijuana, searches the car, finds marijuana, and let's say he's like, you were good, you were cool, I'm just going to write you, I'm just going to give you a court copy, the marijuana city ordinance, right? He asks for your ID, he goes back to his car, he runs your ID to confirm that he does have the person that you say you are, and then a failure to appear warrant pops up. In another county.
You're in trouble now.
Right. So you're thinking you're just going to get a court copy and, you're not understanding why you're being taken into custody. But if you have an outstanding warrant in another jurisdiction, that cop has an obligation to bring you in. So in that instance, you will be arrested, even though it's just a marijuana charge. Another hypothetical situation. Let's say you get pulled over, tag light, same thing. He smells marijuana. He's about to give you a court copy and something else happens, or he instructs you, he gives you a lawful command. And after several lawful commands, you refuse to do it. You refuse to identify yourself, or you give him a wrong name, a wrong date of birth for whatever reason. That's a false representation. That's a disorderly conduct obstruction. you'll then be taken in based off those charges. And people will be like, I don't understand why I got arrested. It's a marijuana city ordinance. Well, you gave a false name. Well, why'd you give a false name? Well, I was scared because I thought I had a warrant, but you actually didn't. So now you have a false representation charge that you arrested on and a marijuana charge. And so, but it's fine. You know, life happens. And the important thing is we're down there in custody, kind of being able to walk them through the situations. Like I said, they come out more educated on the law, more informed what to do next time, and the risk they're taking with marijuana possession, which they shouldn't be doing because it's still illegal. Lastly, and it actually happened today in court. A young woman came back. She was arrested at the Greyhound and they were going to give her a court copy. She got cited for the City of Atlanta marijuana ordinance. And so I was wondering, I looked at the ticket and it said physical arrest. And so I was looking at it and I was wondering, and I asked her, I said, why did he take you in? But I had a hunch because she didn't have an address listed on the ticket. And she informed me just exactly what I thought it was. She didn't have any identification on her. So one of the things that a law enforcement officer must do in regards to, standard procedure is identifying who they have detained or investigating, right? So one of the ways they do that is, that's why they ask you for identification. And then, sometimes they got fingerprint scanners. Some of them don't. So if you don't have identification on you and he can't positively identify you at the scene, he's probably going to have to take you in to
now,
see who you are.
Is this true for all misdemeanors? Like, say you have some sort of loitering charge, and criminal law is not actually my specialty. I do mostly business and transactional law.
Right.
But if you have some other misdemeanor and you don't have ID on you, can the police still pull you in jail, or is it just marijuana?
No, I'd say any violation or any criminal charge, they have to identify you. So if they can't fingerprint you right there with the fingerprint scanner and identify you, they're going to have to take you in and get you booked to see and confirm that's who you are, right? Because they don't want to charge the wrong person. So unfortunately, that young woman didn't have identification. She was actually from Chicago, so she came back down on the Greyhound to handle the charge. And she came back with identification. I spoke to the solicitor about it. And based upon her taken into custody, the solicitor understood what was going on and actually suspended her fine. So, there's a bunch of parties working together. The administration's behind this. A lot of the other, solicitor's office, APD, there's a lot of agencies getting behind this, and they understand and are aware. So it's turning out to be a better thing, and things are getting better and better for the community and the public in general.
Okay, that sounds like a pretty tough situation. You're in Chicago. At first, you shouldn't be smoking at a Greyhound station. Right. I don't know why in the world she would think that was all right.
A lot of people pass through, and there's a stop right there by the Garnett station, the Greyhound, and they hear about it. They hear about it. Mm-hmm. I heard marijuana's legalized now in Atlanta. I don't know what's going on. Nah, see what happened is it's not it's decriminalized. That's the same thing. Nah. So, but we're there to get them out and inform them, and now they know, and so that's one more person informed out on the streets.
Yeah, that's a lesson the hard way.
Right.
You're listening to Lewis on the Law. I've got a lot of stuff to go, and really not a lot of time coming up. I'm here in the studio with attorney Terrell Thomas. We're talking about the City of Atlanta's new marijuana law. If you have a legal situation, this show is not meant to guide your way through it. This show is designed just to give you legal information. If you have a serious legal problem, you need to go ahead and consult with an attorney. Hire an attorney if you have a serious legal issue. You can contact me at jameslewislegal.com. And I don't really handle criminal issues, but I do know a lot of attorneys who do, and I can direct you in the right way. But I want you guys to get help. This show is all about empowering you, the individual. We'll be back in a minute, and we'll get into some policy issues with this new law. You are listening to Lewis on the Law. My name is James Lewis, and I am here each week to bring you legal information. That's right. This show is all about information about empowering you, the individual. This show is not designed to replace the advice of an attorney. If you have a serious legal issue, you need to go ahead and contact an attorney. You can contact me, and I may be able to help you with your issue. If I can't help you with your issue, I can direct you to an attorney who can. You can contact me at jameslewislegal.com. You can email me at james@jameslewislegal. or you can give me a call at 404-610-0075. If you have a topic you'd like me to discuss on air, go ahead and drop me a line on my contact page on my website. And if I like your topic, I will bring in an attorney who actually knows something about your topic, and we'll get into it on air. Now, I have an awesome show. We're at the last segment. I have attorney Terrell Thomas with me in the studio. He is with the City of Atlanta's Public Defender's Office, and we are talking about the City of Atlanta's new marijuana law. There's a bunch of confusion about it, tons of confusion because everyone thinks it's legal. We're almost like Colorado. But no, we're not. We're in Georgia.
Absolutely.
So I want to talk about some policy considerations here because the disparate effect has a massive effect on a person's economic situation. If you're just brought in jail, if you're just arrested and they say it's not punishment, but being arrested feels like punishment, but you might be on your way to work, you've missed work, you have to spend the night there. There are all kinds of situations that go on. You may lose your job. And this cycle of poverty can keep a person in a cycle of poverty, especially if they're continually arrested for the same thing over and over and over again because they don't get it. They don't think that it's a big deal. Hey, man, I'm just smoking a little marijuana and it's not a big deal. I don't know why people are getting so upset about it, but they keep getting arrested. And now they're stuck in this cycle where they can't get a job because they start having these things. So, do the solicitors, do the prosecutors, and I know you're on the other side of the fence, but do they take these policy considerations into effect when they're charging people?
I'm sure they do. I'm sure they're aware. And I think an important takeaway is that we have seen a decrease in the actual state misdemeanor and more of the city ordinance. So I think I can't speak for them, but from what I understand, the administration, City Hall, APD, the Solicitor's Office, a lot of the administration, they're behind what we do, and they're aware of the discriminatory effect. That was the basis behind the law change, as well as the bail reform. Two huge changes that have had a great, huge positive impact on our community. So I would have to say that I believe that all different branches and all different departments are on board for the same common goal of a more efficient judicial system.
Yeah, because I don't smoke marijuana actively anymore.
Right.
But I have seen people drunk out there on the streets. They're wild, they're crazy, and then I've seen people stoned over there in the corner, and they're just kind of quiet. Right. So you have this massive inequality kind of over law. Now I don't want to get too much into that, but it causes a policy issue where you're clogging up jails for people that are kind of harmless.
Right, and I agree. I think generally, and like I said, I think that went to the basis of changing the law is that arresting citizens for low-level marijuana, nonviolent offenses is essentially it's not the best public policy. It's the law, but it's probably not the best public policy. It's not very cost efficient. It clogs up the courts, the court dockets. It takes law enforcement off of their patrols, off of the streets where we need them because they're busy, booking in people for marijuana and other low-level offenses, as opposed to being out there patrolling the streets trying to prevent some of these higher or violent crimes, robberies, theft by takings, people stealing cars at the gas station, people snatching stuff from college students, and just things of those nature. So, we're under the belief at the Public Defender's Office that prevention is cheaper than punishment. We feel that it's important to have an educated and informed public and community. That's why we're out there every day, not just at the courthouse.
And that's what you're doing here on the air, educating the public.
Exactly. That's why we're here today. And that's why we're out at these different entities, organizations, nonprofits, homeless shelters, schools, middle schools, high schools, and informing people of their rights and what's going on and what the law really means. And so we feel that an educated and a legally informed public is probably the best community you could have to prevent those arrests, to prevent, those encounters with law enforcement that might take a turn for the worse. So the better equipped they are, the better our community will be overall.
Okay, now before we get too far away from this, I wanted to bring something real that are not that this isn't real, but something that our listeners can use. Say you're out on the street, it's a Friday night, you're out there, you made a little bit too much noise, and you've attracted the attention of the wrong type of person. That's the guy in blue with the shiny lights on top of his car. What's your advice here? How does a person go about and handle that situation?
Sure. So, in a situation where you have a law enforcement encounter and you may or may not have an illegal substance on you, or if you're getting pulled over in a traffic stop, you have your 4th, 5th, and 6th constitutional rights. And so as far as that's kind of like a slippery slope, or it opens up a can of worms because there's a lot of things depending upon the specific scenario. But generally, you should obey. I wouldn't consent to any search, but any other lawful commands like producing identification or stepping out of a vehicle, those are things.
Wait a minute. Did you say don't consent to a search? I think this is really important.
Right. So I wouldn't consent to any search of my person or of my property because you're essentially, like we learned in con law or crim pro adjudication, that's waiving your constitutional rights, your 4th Amendment right. So I wouldn't. Any other procedural lawful commands, I would definitely just go ahead and follow from the police, identifying yourself, providing identification, stepping out of the vehicle in regards to, any officer safety concerns. So I think identification is important because if they know who you are and they can identify you, that's one thing knocked off their checklist. Another important thing that kind of goes to a lot of situations with law enforcement encounters is common courtesy, just human decency and just etiquette.
Means don't be a jerk. Have ID. Don't be a jerk.
it goes a long way. Now, as far as anything else, I wouldn't consent to any type of search of anything. And then after that, you're kind of under the authority of the officer, unfortunately. But with that, that's where we step in. So as long as you assert your protections of your constitutional rights, and then we could take it from there if, in fact, you are taken into custody. But like I said, a lot of that common courtesy stuff, it'll get you a long way.
Okay, sure. So we kind of got a checklist here. Have an ID with you, don't be a jerk, and don't consent to a search. That's pretty important right there. So what is going to be the ripple effect of this? Are we going to see a gradual lessening of the focus on this with police officers? Are there going to be some kind of ripple effects, do you think?
Absolutely.
I don't want you to be like a fortune teller and project something you can't. But
No. It actually already has. We're seeing more and more, less people, definitely less younger people of color or less people coming in and taken into custody for marijuana in general. And coupled with a bail reform, even if they are taken into custody, the effects of being incarcerated are decreased with the new bail reform, which was also pushed by the administration, by city council. Everyone was on board behind this on the same page. And so because of those two things, marijuana decriminalization and bail reform, less people are being incarcerated. Now, you still have to come to court and handle your charges, but you can go home that night and you can go to work the next morning, right? You won't lose your job. You can go pick up your kids from daycare. You can make it down to the rent office, the rental office on the 1st to pay your rent, right? So all of those things are still left intact. And so that's kind of the direction. So it's already had a great, huge impact, lower incarceration rates. Law enforcement now, just by giving those court copies, they're out on patrol more, which naturally and hopefully should lead to more them being more vigilant and, on the block for those more serious offenses, which hopefully in turn leads to a reduction in crime rates of robberies and people getting stuck up in parking lots and, cars being taken and houses being broken into, right? So the ripple effects are already taking place right now. I think we're going in the right direction. Essentially, I would still say it's not decriminalized, but we're going in that direction as a city. I think everyone's on board. The administration, city council, public defender's office, and all the other departments. And that's the direction. I think that's the best direction that we could possibly go.
Yeah, because there are some cities, like I want to mention Clarkston in particular, where there are pretty much there's a policy that they're not arresting people. Really? At least that's what I hear on the street.
Nice.
I mean, I don't know. I've never actually been there. So.
I think I've drove through Clarkston, but Clarkston, from my research, was the first municipality to decriminalize it. Atlanta came in, then City of South Fulton decriminalized it March 2016. Fulton County decriminalized it, I believe, in June. Forest Park, I believe, has decriminalized it, and Savannah as well. And it's just essentially following the national trend. 30 states have some form of decriminalization of legalization.
Now we have a lot. I wanted to get into medical marijuana, all this stuff, but we're not going to be able to. What are some big takeaways here?
Sure. So if you don't get anything from this interview or this information, please know that you can still be arrested for possession of marijuana under an ounce in the city of Atlanta limits, whether it be the city ordinance or the state misdemeanor statute. You can still be arrested under a bunch of different situations or just simply under that ordinance. But the good thing to that same point is police are now more aware of the discriminatory effect, and they are now giving more court copies, so less people are getting incarcerated. Next is that so people can understand, with the mayor, city council, administration, everyone being on board with this, what we want people to understand is those are elected officials. Those are publicly elected officials that we as a public community voted in. And so that goes to voting rights. Voting rights are important. And so people need to get out there and vote. Voting is really important. So get out there and vote for representatives that, reflect what you feel is important. And lastly, that's what we're here for, the City of Atlanta Public Defender's Office. We're here to inform and to help our community by having these conversations, not just with our clients, but with the community as a whole.
You're listening to Lewis on the Law. We have run out of time. Thank you, Attorney Thomas, for being in the studio with me. We'll be back next week.